Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Boston City Council's Committee on Government Operations hearing. The subject is docket number 1200, an ordinance regarding the right to charge. My name is City Councilor Michelle Wu, and I am just filling in for our Government Operations Committee Chairman, Councilor Flaherty, who's running a few minutes late. He got something happened at the last second, but he's on his way. And we are also joined by my colleague, City Councilor Tim McCarthy. This hearing was sponsored by myself and referred to the committee on September 13th, 2017. Just a reminder to everyone that this hearing is being recorded and will be rebroadcast on Comcast 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, as well as posted on the City of Boston website. So the goal, I'll just quickly summarize, this ordinance is an effort to make it easier for the City of Boston to fulfill its climate goals and its greenhouse gas emissions reductions goals by facilitating electric vehicle infrastructure. It actually was sparked by a constituent request. Someone reached out and said that their family wanted to purchase and switch to an electric vehicle from a gas-powered one, and be better for the environment and better for fuel efficiency, et cetera. However, in a situation living in a multifamily house that is condoed, the condo documents were very specific that any changes to the property needed to have sign-off from everyone involved. And in a very small 2 or 3 unit condo situation, if one of the owners is not inclined to support that for various reasons, then it makes it very difficult for us to be promoting electric vehicles. Several states and jurisdictions have similar right to charge laws on the books, where it essentially says that electric vehicle infrastructure is part of the public good and therefore can be installed. Councilor McCarthy, do you want to add anything?
Nope, good.
So I think everybody has a copy of this. Oh, I'll just mention also that in the time since we filed the ordinance and up until the hearing, we did receive some comments that actually the language which has been taken from examples in other jurisdictions should be adapted, because chargers now are not just the technology has evolved, so you don't have to just install a freestanding thing in the driveway or on the street. You can actually put a very small unit on the wall, and it takes up even less space. So we had a technical edit just to make that clear that the installation on the wall would also be allowed. But I want to hand it over to our administration panel. Thank you so much for joining us. I think, Carl, you wanted to start?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today concerning Docket 1200, an ordinance regarding the right to charge. I'm going to make I'm Carl Spector, Commissioner of the Environment, and I'm going to make a few general remarks, and then my colleague Vineet Gupta, Director of Planning for the Transportation Department, will describe some of the actions we are already taking to increase the use of electric vehicles in Boston. Mayor Walsh strongly supports the intent of this proposal and the expansion of electric vehicles in Boston. In 2015, transportation sources, mostly automobiles, were responsible for about 25% of the Boston community's greenhouse gas emissions. This means that we will not be able to meet our goal of carbon neutrality by 2050 unless there is a significant change in the energy sources for transportation. Over the past 10 years, as long as we have been tracking greenhouse gas emissions, steadily improving vehicle efficiency has contributed to our overall reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. The growing number of electric vehicles has been a part of this change, and we can easily foresee that its importance is likely to increase. As the proposed ordinance correctly highlights, ensuring that Boston has the infrastructure where people live and where they work to support the use of electric vehicles is a key part of facilitating this transition. Vineet will discuss our recent steps. I would point out that the efficacy of electric vehicles as a GHG reduction strategy presupposes that we have a supply of electricity undergoing decarbonization. And as you know, councillors, we have had some discussions in this chamber about the most effective means of accelerating that trend. In regard to the proposal under consideration today, we would support a measure that facilitates the ability of residents to use their own resources to install charging facilities on private property. However, the law department has analyzed the proposed ordinance and concluded that it is not allowed under state law because cities and towns may not legislate with respect to or in any way regulate civil relationships, such as the relationship between a residential owner and an association, unless the legislation is incident to the city's broad police power. The proposal would need to take the form of a home rule petition, and we would be happy to work with the council in putting this measure into that form. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. After Vinit's remarks, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner, and councilors, and those present in the audience. I want to touch on four initiatives or four policy approaches that the city is currently undertaking to support the adoption of electric vehicles by our residents. The first has to do with our access plan agreements that we sign with developers. These are for new buildings. And these are administered through the Boston Transportation Department. Similarly, the Air Pollution Control Commission requires permits of new developers, of new developments, if they are in the parking freeze zone. Both regulations require new developments to set aside 5% of their total parking spaces that are proposed in the development, set aside 5% for electric vehicle charging. In other words, developers are required to provide the wiring to allow for charging. So that program has been in effect for actually several years now, and most developers are complying because they see it in their benefit in the long term to provide spaces for electric vehicle charging. We have incidentally done a pilot on City Street. It's right on Cambridge Street outside City Hall Plaza. Several years ago, we installed 3 electric charging units that have been utilized fairly well. They are vintage now based on the kind of technologies we have, but they have been well received. Our fleet, the Boston city fleet or city-owned vehicles, we are trying to make those vehicles carbon-free. And this data is slightly outdated, but currently 25% of vehicles in the city fleet are carbon-free. As part of Go Boston 2030, we have laid out an aspirational goal that by 2030, all vehicles in the city's fleet would be emission-free. Finally, we are exploring opportunities to install electric charging facilities in our municipally owned parking lots. And so we haven't done any yet, but we think it's a good opportunity to install some. And so we've identified throughout the cities some municipally owned parking lots that might benefit from having that facility. So as the Commissioner mentioned, we are supportive of the ordinance, and we are doing our own part at the city to encourage the use of electric vehicles.
Great. Thank you both. Councilor McCarthy, do you have any questions?
Just one quick one, if you will. The charging stations that are on the street, the electric, are those specific? I know where they are. The issue I have is some people can't afford an electric car, so we are taking those spots away. So what would be the rollout about, and what would be the punishment, if you will? Because there are families who have cars, but certainly
right.
They haven't really made them inexpensive. Yeah. In fact, if you want to buy say a Ford Fusion and then a Ford Fusion electric, you're looking at significant cost increase right. to buy the electric car.
So excellent question. And the spaces that are on Cambridge Street are still metered spaces. And, we haven't really started, we don't kind of stand around and ticket somebody necessarily, but we would like to see electric vehicles use those spots. Once there's an electric vehicle there, it takes some time for them to charge. But overall, if we were to roll out parking spaces for electric vehicle charging, it's that issue that needs to be thought about. It's an issue about not wanting to do a significant capital investment on the sidewalk and then find that those spaces are not flexible enough for other uses.
Right.
So it's not something that we are rolling out in any significant way on city streets. So it's a very good question. Thank you.
Cass is offering some spit up to the conversation. So I want to thank you both for your testimony and also for the work that you've been doing. I think Councilor McCarthy's point is a great one, that until now the cost of electric vehicles have been quite prohibitive for
We're a good team up here, no doubt about it.
very family friendly. But the costs have been prohibitive for your average Boston resident. The costs are coming down quickly, and I think part of the goal of this is to recognize that within hopefully the near term, especially as some of the Tesla pricing and these options are coming down to more accessible prices, that will, I think the switch from the tipping point of pricing being a luxury item to very accessible for your average family will happen quickly and faster than the city would be able to react with infrastructure changes. So it's good to be prepared and know that there's a plan in place. I think we had a brief conversation about Corporation Council's view from our research and the analysis of case law that has been done on the council side. I mean, we would respectfully disagree about the requirement that it has to be a home rule petition. Again, not an issue to take up here, but I'll work offline with all the lawyers, and I guess we'll send over a copy of this memo, but the underlying principle is that the City of Boston can enact ordinances that are related to the city's ability to promote the general welfare of its residents, so long as it's not preempted by state law and there is no conflict currently with state law. So our belief is that we can do this as an ordinance, and again, we'll follow up and talk more about the exact mechanism to making sure we codify the intent that everyone in this room agrees on. So that's all in terms of questions that I had. If you both had nothing else to offer, I want to just thank you for being here. You're welcome to stay, and then we'll shift over to public testimony. We have a few folks signed up. Thank you both.
Thank you.
So we will begin with, and Carrie, what would you recommend, the podium or seated? Podium? Okay. So if folks can, there's not a long list, but if you could just come up to the podium, we'll start with Eugenia Gibbons, and then followed by Kevin O'Brien.
Thank you very much. My name is Eugenia Gibbons. I'm the Clean Energy Director at Mass Energy Consumers Alliance, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to offer comment today in support of Docket 1200 and the proposal before the committee and the council. So Mass Energy is a Boston-based advocacy organization. We're in JP. We're a consumer and environmental advocacy organization whose mission since 1982 has been to make energy affordable and environmentally sustainable. And we do that in a variety of ways. Mostly we're trying to help individuals, homeowners, businesses, communities engage with some of the clean energy solutions that we all need to consider as we try to combat climate change. We recognize climate change is a multifaceted issue, and there's no silver bullet. There are many things that need to be done to combat it. And so electric vehicles are one of the things that we are very supportive of, and that's one reason why we support this proposal. It's stated in the materials that the transportation sector accounts for a significant proportion of the greenhouse gas emissions in the Commonwealth and also obviously in the city of Boston. And if we're going to actually hit the ambitious goals that have been set statewide and citywide, we have to electrify the transportation sector. And analysis has demonstrated that charging or lack thereof remains a significant barrier to access for individuals who want to otherwise transition to an electric vehicle. As Councilor Wu noted, the cost of EVs are coming down. There are new vehicles available at different price points. The technology itself is becoming increasingly accessible, but what continues to be a barrier is where folks might be able to charge, particularly in densely populated centers and in places where there are multi-unit dwellings. So that's what makes this proposal so significant. It is commendable that new developments going forward have an obligation to incorporate electric vehicle charging infrastructure and stations and wiring in their developments, but this would address the need that is before us today for buildings and multi-dwelling units that already exist, that are not being retrofitted, and that, as you noted, have residents who would like to be able to charge. And I will mention that this is just a complementary strategy. It complements all the other wonderful things that are being done in this city, and just makes good sense and would allow other people who are thinking about access or driving an EV to be able to do it. So I'm happy to, I will submit formal comments. I'm happy to answer the questions. I'll mention or restate just from our own experience running a discount electric vehicle program that's geared towards informing consumers about the benefits of EVs. We've encountered this issue with folks even in Boston and in other cities around the Commonwealth who really do want to commit to an electric vehicle, have found that it's affordable, but for whatever reason are in a multi-dwelling unit and haven't been able to install a charger. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Kevin?
Hey everybody. So my name is Kevin O'Brien, and I work with the Sierra Club of Massachusetts. So I've been on the Clean Transportation for All campaign with them for about 2.5 years now. So that's a campaign that deals with electrifying transportation, increased access to public transit, and ultimately just reducing emissions across the board. So in that capacity, I've spoken with a lot of numerous groups, agencies, and citizens across the state about just the challenges and the opportunities that are presented by electric vehicles. So I've been to 1.5 million public events, and I talked to a lot of folks who know nothing about the cars, and engineering wizards who have done EV conversions in their garages. And the issue of where to charge comes up a lot, and the landlord issue and the associations issue comes up a lot too. So I mean, I've heard it before. Sometimes it's the reality is sometimes you have a beef with your neighbor, or you have an association that doesn't want to deal with this, or something like that, or they just don't understand it, or it's a new thing. But our air quality is what suffers from that, and that's kind of the main issue here. So EVs are a solution that we need to be removing barriers from, not maintaining them. And I think this ordinance is kind of a common sense solution to solve that. As long as a person's plans to install the charging station are reasonable and they're within zoning requirements, I really don't think there's any reason that an association or a neighbor should be able to prevent them from doing that. So I mean, this ordinance removes yet another barrier. And every major city's climate plan that I've seen has a big EV component to it, so there's definitely a recognition there that these things are important and that they're a great solution. I've seen it in Boston's plan and a lot of other plans. And making it easier to charge is something that we continue to find is one of the most effective ways to incentivize people to make this transition. So I just think this ordinance makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So everyone, Vinny was the only other one. Everyone else that we had on the sheet was not signed up to testify. Are there any other folks in the room who are interested? Feel free to speak now. No? Okay, then at this point we will work offline on figuring out the language and the legal mechanism, but appreciate everyone's time and looking forward to making it easier to spread electric vehicle infrastructure in Boston. So this hearing on docket number 1200 is adjourned.